Over the last few months, the Trump administration has been buying up stocks like never seen before. And every stock they touch turns into gold. I mean, literally, some of these stocks are running anywhere between 30 to 100% off of news that the Trump administration is taking a stake in these companies. So in the first half of this video, we're going to be talking about some of these stocks that the Trump administration has been buying, and we're going to look at the common themes and the common criteria surrounding these companies, because in the second half, we're going to be talking about the stocks that I think the Trump administration can invest into next. But before we start, just keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice and it's made for entertainment purposes only. And so this whole thing with the Trump administration getting involved in the public market actually first started happening in 2018 during the first Trump administration. And it first happened when Trump announced tariffs on steel imports. So this was basically a tax imposed on foreign companies looking to export their steel into the United States. And so what this did was it hurt those foreign companies, but in turn it helped domestic steel producers. And so this caused some of these companies to rally up 3, 4, 5% on the day that this was announced. But this was really just the beginning, because this is just a tariff, but the deals we're seeing today are completely different. And one example is MP Materials, ticker symbol MP, and their mission is to restore the full rare earth supply chain to the United States. And so in July, it was announced that the DoD and the Trump administration took a direct stake in MP Materials, which was the first deal of its kind. And I'll read you some context here and how the deal structure worked. So pre-2025, MP Materials owned the Mountain Pass rare earth mine in California, the only large-scale rare earth source in the United States. But almost all of their output was being shipped to China for refining. So rare earth metals are super important for new age technologies, and we'll look at some of those technology in just a second. But it's very important to note that MP Materials was the only large-scale rare earth source in the United States, but all of their output was being shipped to China so it can get refined there, because the United States didn't have the capabilities to refine some of these metals. So in July 10th of 2025, the US Department of Defense struck a landmark deal with MP to re-anchor rare earth production and magnet making inside the United States. So they struck a deal to bring back production in the United States. And so this was basically a $400 million DoD investment structured as a new class of preferred stock convertible into common shares. And this made the DoD one of MP's largest shareholders, and they own 15% of the company off of this deal. And it also reads here that the DoD also received the right to buy additional common shares at $30 a share. And the DoD also guaranteed a minimum price floor of $110 per kilogram for NdPr. So this basically means that if the price of NdPr were to fall below $110 per kilogram, then taxpayer money would have to subsidize MP Material to bring it back up to $110 per kilogram, basically helping MP Materials become more and more profitable if the price of NdPr were to fall. And finally, they also have the option to take out a $150 million loan to fund heavy rare earth separation and magnet plant buildouts, and they're guaranteed long-term government commitments to buy magnets directly from MP Materials. And so like I said, this was the first deal of its kind where the government would literally take a full-on stake in a publicly traded company. And you can expect that on the day that this was announced, which was right here in July, in the first week or two that this was announced, the stock was basically went from $30 a share to $60 a share. So it basically doubled, in a couple weeks as soon as this deal was announced, because again, this was the first deal of its kind. And ever since then, so this was announced at $30 a share, the stock is now trading at $75 a share. And it makes sense why they would invest in a company like MP Materials, because some of the use cases for rare earth metals is petroleum refining, chemical processing, hybrid vehicles, protective eyewear, optical glass, clean energy, radiation monitoring. I mean, all kinds of new age technologies need the rare earth minerals. So it does make sense why the Department of Defense and the Trump administration would want to invest in a company like rare earth metals. And finally, the company is very unprofitable. Their revenues are all over the place and their profitability metrics are super bad. So it does make sense why they would need a cash injection from the government. And the second company on this list is Intel, which is a deal you're probably all very aware of. And just a few weeks ago, actually, I made a video on Intel. Before this deal was announced, I made a video on Intel talking about why I think it's one of the most important companies for the United States government, and why I thought that the United States government has a direct incentive to make sure that Intel survives and thrives. And a couple of days after that video was made, it was announced that the Trump administration invested $5.7 billion into Intel, and they bought a 10% stake. and the stock went up from $24 a share to $32 a share overnight. And it's a no-brainer as to why the government would want a company like Intel to thrive. Because as of now, the only foundry business in the entire world is TSMC. So TSMC is the only company that can manufacture and produce our chips. And TSMC is the company that AMD gets their chips from, Nvidia gets their chips from, and literally every company in the world gets their chips from TSMC because they're the only foundry business in the entire world. They have like a 95% market share when it comes to producing chips. And although Taiwan is an allied country, it does pose a massive geopolitical risk because Taiwan is right next to China, and we know that China has been eyeing Taiwan for years. So if anything were to happen and it takes us to a situation where we cannot get our chips from Taiwan anymore for any reason, then the entire US tech sector is basically screwed. Because once again, every single chip designer in the United States relies on TSMC for manufacturing. And so Intel was trying to change the game by building their own foundry business in the United States. But the problem with this foundry business is that it burns tens of billions of dollars and it's not expected to be profitable anytime soon. They're expecting profitability sometime in 2027 to 2028. So it makes sense why they need a cash injection, because once again, the foundry business is a cash burning machine, and it's super important for the US tech sector to have their very own foundry business here on US soil. And finally, the last deal I want to talk about on this list is a deal that happened only a few days ago. And it was announced that the Vancouver-based Lithium Americas soars on reports that the Trump administration is seeking an equity stake. And we'll talk about some of the details of that equity stake. So the Trump administration wants to take about a 10% equity stake in Lithium Americas, the company developing the Thacker Pass lithium mine in Nevada. And this stake is tied to renegotiating a $2.3 billion Department of Energy loan that was originally approved under Biden, but Trump's team wants tougher terms in exchange for government backing. So essentially what happened is that this same exact company, about 5 years ago during the Biden administration, were approved of a $2.3 billion loan. But what happened is about a week ago, it was announced that the Trump administration didn't want to give them that loan anymore. So the Trump administration came out and said, we don't want to give you guys this loan anymore. We want to renegotiate the terms. And off of this news, the stock sold off like 7, 8, or maybe even 10% off of this news. So this was just a week ago. And then a couple days later, it was announced that the Trump administration were eyeing a 10% equity stake. And that's when the stock soared, literally 80% in one day, and now it's up another 32% after hours. And once again, it does make sense as to why the Trump administration would want to invest in a lithium exploration company like LAC, because it reads here that lithium's primary use case is in lithium-ion batteries for electronics, EVs, and grid storage. So it does make sense as to why the Trump administration is very keen on investing in this company. And once again, it is an exploration company, so they don't make any money as of yet, so it does make sense as to why a cash injection would very much benefit the company. So the common theme and the common criteria we've been seeing around these stocks is that they have a strategic importance to national security. So we talked about rare earth metals, which are super important for the US tech sector. We also talked about lithium, which is very similar, is also super important for the US tech sector. And finally, we talked about Intel, which is building its foundry business on United States soil, making it one of the most important projects in the United States today. And the second criteria we saw with some of these companies is financial vulnerability, which means that some of these companies needed a cash injection to keep operations moving forward. And so like I said in the very beginning of this video, the second half of this video, we'll be talking about the stocks that I think fit these two criteria and stocks that I think the Trump administration actually has a high chance of taking a stake in these companies. And so I'm going to be talking about two large cap stocks and then two small cap stocks. And the very first stock on this list is Lockheed Martin, ticker symbol LMT. This one is a no-brainer because it is a top US defense contractor making jets, missiles, satellites, and drones. And it reduces dependence on foreign suppliers. So even though this is a large cap company, they're already profitable, they don't necessarily need a cash injection. But and I believe this is going to happen, I believe that the Trump administration will eventually set up some sort of sovereign wealth fund, similar to countries like UAE and China. And these countries don't only invest in small cap unprofitable stocks, because when you set up an actual, sovereign wealth fund, you're not only looking at funding companies that need funding, you're also looking to make good investments into companies that have strategic national importance. So this is why I think a company like Lockheed Martin has a real chance of being invested in by the United States government. The second stock on this list, again, is also a large cap company, and it's Constellation Energy. And this one I think is a no-brainer as well, because nuclear power is critical for a resilient grid, clean energy transition, and baseload support. And this is a company that already has massive contracts in place with the United States government, and the United States government also subsidizes this company, and it gives them some sort of price floor as to where if they price of nuclear were to drop below that, they would subsidize it. It's very similar to the deal they struck with MP Materials. And for those who don't know, the Trump administration is super bullish on nuclear energy to power up the data center revolution. And so now the next two stocks I'm going to be talking about are small cap stocks, so they do carry a lot more risk, but these stocks need cash similar to companies like MP Materials, LAC, and Intel. And the first stock I want to talk about is Ouster Inc., ticker symbol OUST. And Ouster Inc. is a LiDAR company. And their Ouster OS1 is one of the first high-resolution 3D LiDAR sensors approved under DoD's Blue UAS framework for unmanned systems. So this company has already worked with the DoD before and they're the only company that have their LiDAR already approved by the DoD. And LiDAR is essential for autonomous vehicles, drones, defense, and surveillance systems. So it makes so much sense as to why the United States government would want to invest in a company like Ouster, because not only are they a small cap, they're unprofitable and they need the cash, but they're also the only one that's already worked with the DoD before, and they have their LiDAR technology already approved by the DoD's framework. And LiDAR is essential for autonomous vehicles, drones, defense, and surveillance system. And the very last company on this list is actually a company I haven't heard of before, and I came across it as I was doing research for this video, and that company is Skywater Technology Inc. And this company, similar to Intel, is building their very own foundry business on United States soil. And it says here that it already has ties with the DoD. For example, Skywater was already approved or awarded $27 million by the DoD to develop radiation-hardened chip technology. And it says here, like we all know, chips are perhaps the most strategic industry in modern tech wars. Having a US foundry business helps reduce dependency on overseas fabs, especially in Taiwan. So this thesis is very similar to Intel, but this is a small cap company that needs a lot more cash than Intel does. So for the same exact reasons why I think the United States government invested in a company like Intel, I think that it's very likely that they invest in a company like Skywater Technology. And before I quickly wrap up this video, I quickly want to talk about this whole idea of the Trump administration investing into publicly traded companies. And in my opinion, if they want to continue doing this, then they do really need to establish a sovereign wealth fund, similar to countries like China and the UAE. Because as of now, it really does seem like the wild, wild west where the Trump administration is just picking stocks. These stocks are rallying 50, 60, 70% with no guardrails, with no protocols, with no official regulation. So if they want to continue doing this, I really do think that they need to establish some sort of sovereign wealth fund and make it official. And the second point I want to talk about, and I won't go too deep into this because I think this is a video topic this is a topic for another video, but I don't think that this is the right business model or the right economic model for a country like the United States of America. Because, as we all know, the United States of America runs on free market capitalism. And this is kind of changing that. I mean, whether you want to admit it or not, this is not a political video or a political topic at all, whether you're a Trump supporter or not, you have to admit that this kind of changes the rules of the game. And this is kind of turning into the China economic model where we do have capitalism, but it's turning more and more into state capitalism. And I don't think this fits the US culture of financial markets. So, tell me what you guys think about it. Do you guys think this is what we should be moving on to and we should be copying the China model? Or do you think that this is a bad move by the Trump administration? Let me know down in the comments below. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.